Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-gita as it is, chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, text number 9. No purport to number 9, but we'll read it anyhow, and then we'll read the next verse, which has a purport. Sarinmitya udasina madhyastadveshu bandishu sadushvapita papeshu samabhudir vishishate. Person is considered still further advanced, regards honest well-wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral mediators, the envious friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. Okay, I'm going to talk something about 9, but first we'll read 10. Yogi yunjita sadatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekaki yata chetatma nirashya parigraha. Yogi yunjita sadatam atmanam rahasi stita ekaki yata chetatma nirashya aparigraha. Yogi atmanam rahasi stita ekaki yata chetatma nirashya aparigraha. Yogi unjita sadatam manam rasi sita nirashya aparigraha. Ladies, Yogi unjita sadatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekaki yata chetatma nirashya aparigraha. Yogi unjita sadatam atmanam rahasi stitaha ekaki yata chetatma nirashya aparigraha. Yogi, a transcendentalist, unjita, must concentrate in Krishna consciousness. Satatam, constantly. Atmanam, himself, by body, mind, and self. Rahasi, in a secluded place. Stitaha, being situated. Ekaki, alone. Yata chitatma, always careful in mind. Nirashi, without being attracted by anything else. Aparigraha, freed from the feeling of possessiveness. See any word there you recognize in aparigraha? Any Sanskrit words you recognize? What's that? Graha, yeah. What does graha mean? Yeah. What's that? Graha? Graha means to seize. It may have many meanings, but anyhow, one of the principal meanings. That's why the planets are called graha. They seize the living entities with their karma. They give the living entities their karma. And a parigraha, what is a parigri? Apari. Any other word that you know of has a pari? Means more or less all around. So to completely take something, feeling possessiveness, to think, oh, this is mine. Parigraha. Just to try to seize it. Check your pockets. Make sure no one sees anything. Translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhagavad-gita Swami Srila Prabhupada. Anyone, actually, this is Ashi. What does Ashi mean? Ashabad? You heard that before? Ashabad? What does that mean? Yeah, they want something. Ashibad, nirash, and nir is a negation, to not desire anything. Yata chit atma, always careful in mind, to not become attracted by anything, and to become free from this feeling of possessiveness. Remind you of any other verse in the second chapter that we went over? Vihaya kamiyak sarvam pumam sharti nispriha nirmamo nirahankara shanti madigachiti. Vihaya kaman, less, yak sarvam. Vihaya kamiyak sarvam pumam sharti nispriha. Same thing here. Concocted desires. Prajahati yada kaman sarvam partha manogatan anmani vatmana tushtas dita pragasa toshade. A person who gives up all desires born of mental speculation. When his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, he's said to be situated in transcendental knowledge. So there's a continuation, there's a continuity between all these different yogas. It's not that one yoga, of course nowadays people think yoga is meant so you can take your foot and put it behind your neck. And we don't do that in Bhakti Yoga usually. But they think that's the goal. Just put your foot behind, and if you get 2 feet behind your neck, then you're a Mahayogi. But actually the same purpose in all the yoga system is there. Which even in Yama Niyama, it explains that's the preliminary qualifications to practice yoga. You have to be clean and celibate and worship God, etc., etc. Even the Hatha Yoga system. So therefore, the same goal, the same way of purifying the mind is there in all the yoga systems. The whole yoga system is yata chittatma, always careful in the mind. The same thing in Bhakti Yoga. It's no difference. But the method of purification, tesham sadatam yuktanam Bhajantam pritipurvakam didami buddhiyogam tam yenam amupyantite. So we purify our mind and senses by engaging them in Krishna service directly. And they're purifying their mind and senses by ultimately going towards Krishna, Paramatma within the heart, by following Krishna's instructions how to do it. Purport, Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the process of realizing Brahman, this Sankhya Yoga system. Well, Brahman is also a step towards Paramatma realization, which is a step towards Krishna consciousness, which Krishna will explain later on in this chapter. The one who knows that I and the Super Soul dwelling with all beings are one, worships me and remains always with me in all circumstances. So this is the indirect way, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, that we're directly worshiping Krishna. And if we do it with the same goal of purification, giving up possessiveness, In other words, understanding Krishna owns everything, giving up all concocted desires that lead to nothing, etc., etc. Then we get the perfection of realizing Krishna, like in the later aspects of Sankhya Yoga, which will be explained very shortly, but it keeps it, that one is able to concentrate the mind on Krishna by dhyana, dharana, and samadhi. Anyhow, they're all interrelated, and the same thing is repeated in practically every chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. The same things are repeated, but just in slightly different language. Purport. Krishna is realized in different degrees as Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's all Bhagavad-gita is about, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. That's absolute knowledge. You won't go back to the spiritual world and find that's all you'll find there is Krishna. You'll find his expansions in Vaikuntha. Here you'll find Paramatma. In other words, there's not anything beyond what Krishna is talking about here. It's not that you go there and there's a certain part of Goloka Vrindavan where they have puppet shows or they show movies. On the day off, all the gopis and Krishna go to the movies. No, it's not that. There's only Krishna there in his pastimes, which is quite, since he's the source of everything, including this illusory world, it's quite entertaining there. Krishna consciousness means concisely be always engaged in the transcendental loving service to the Lord. For those who are attached to the impersonal Brahman or the localized supersoul are also partially Krishna conscious, because impersonal Brahman is a spiritual ray of Krishna, and the supersoul is the all-pervading partial expansion of Krishna. Thus, the impersonalist and the meditator are also indirectly Krishna conscious. A directly Krishna conscious is the topmost transcendentalist, because such a devotee knows what is meant by Brahman and Paramatma. His knowledge of the Absolute Truth is perfect, whereas the impersonalist and the meditative yogi are imperfectly Krishna conscious. Nevertheless, all these are instructed herewith to be constantly engaged in their particular pursuits so they may come to the highest perfection sooner or later. So Bhagavad-gita doesn't discourage people from following karma yoga or jnana yoga or astanga yoga. But it should be the real yoga, not this. Prabhupada didn't criticize yoga, the real astanga yoga, but this bodily exercise. As like my teacher was B.K.S. Iyengar when I was studying yoga, where I was certified. But he had a conception that the perfection of yoga is not to realize Brahman. His perfection was to become all-pervading within your body, which is rather limited conception of perfection. But he got quite good at it, but so what? He did worship Lord Jagannath in some way, though. That was his worshipful deity. It was all mixed up. In other words, nowadays, it's all mixed up, because there's no clear, people don't hear, or they're not interested in the actual clear purpose of life and how to achieve it. Manda samanda matayo manda bhagu padruta. Therefore, they're impressed by te vidu swartikatim durashya ye bahir artamanina. They're impressed by rather insignificant things. So impressed. I mean, compared to us, someone who's actually dedicated the whole life to one thing, namely to become completely absorbed in his body. I mean, that's pretty rare. Anyone completely dedicates their whole life to one thing. And then they get really good at it. And other people become impressed and they become followers. Because by doing that, he actually became more or less, to a large extent, free from a lot of suffering from the material body. But really higher consciousness was rather elusive for him. Still, as it says here, that one should stick to his particular pursuit, and one will actually make some progress. Because even these so-called yogis who are really trying their best, they study the Vedic literature, although they may misinterpret it in their way, but there's some direction for Krishna there. Like Mr. Anger, he used to give money to the Goshalas, ISKCON Goshalas. Some piety was there. He gave us a discount also. Hridaya Chaitanya Prabhu and Mahendra Prabhu and myself went there every day for a month. He gave us a discount, so usually. The first business of a transcendentalist is to keep the mind always on Krishna. One should always think of Krishna and not forget him even for a moment. Concentration in the mind on the Supreme is called samadhi or trance. In order to concentrate the mind, one should always remain in seclusion and avoid disturbance by external objects. He should be very careful to accept favorable and reject unfavorable conditions that affect his realization. Does that remind you of anything? Favorable and unfavorable? Okay, Archita, what is favorable and unfavorable in our philosophy? What is the verse where it says one should accept favorable things and avoid unfavorable things?
Yeah, there's recommendations, 6 forms of standard.
Sharanagati. Anukulasya sankalpe pratikulyasya varjana. Rakshisya titi vishvaso goprive varnam tata. What is it? Then there's, start over. Anukulasya sankalpe pratikulasya varnam. Rakshasi titi vishvaso goprive varnam tata. Atman vikshekasam sankalpe shadvida sharanagati. So, they have to follow the same process too. You can't get puffed up and realize Krishna no matter what process you follow. You have to always become meek and humble. Have no interest except for Krishna's interest. Always become meek and humble. So Samika Rishi was like that. Karnamuni was on that level. In the Bhagavatam, there are perfect yogis who follow the process and reach perfection. But it's just not possible in this age. And the perfect determination not hanker after unnecessary material things that entangle him by feelings of possessiveness. All these perfections and precautions perfectly executed when one is directly in Krishna consciousness, because direct Krishna consciousness is self-abnegation, wherein there is very little chance for material possessiveness. Srila Rupa Goswami characterizes Krishna consciousness in this way. Anasaktasya vishayan itarham upayunjitaha nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagya uchite. Prapanchikataya budya hari sambandhi vastuna mumukshabhi parityago vairagyam palako ukkachite. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relation to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. A Krishna-conscious person knows well that everything belongs to Krishna, thus he is always free from feelings of personal possession. As such, he has no hankering for anything on his own personal account. He knows how to accept things in favor of Krishna consciousness and how to reject things unfavorable to Krishna consciousness. He is always aloof from material things because he is always transcendental. He is always alone, having nothing to do with persons not in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, a person in Krishna consciousness is the perfect yogi. Yogi yunjita saratam atmanam rasita ekaki yata chitatma nirashya parigraha. Transcendentalist should always engage his body, mind, and self in relation with the Supreme. He should live alone in a secluded place and always carefully control his mind. He should be free from desires and feelings of possessiveness. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane nirvishesha shrunivadi paskadyade sadarne. So in the previous two verses, where Krishna says, Jnana vijnana chiptatma kutasta vijitendriya yukti se yogi samalostrasmakangshana. A person is said to be established in yogi and is called a mystic when he's yogi or mystic, when he's fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is what? Situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So, what stage of realization is this? Partly Brahman. What is the summary of Brahman in the 18th chapter? The first part? Before he obtained devotional service? What's that? You don't sound very convinced. Jayadvaita Swami said at least clear thinking and strong speaking. Clear. So even if you speak strongly, at least you've gotten half the formula. Yes, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. Nishoshiti Nakangshiti. Not hankering, not lamenting. That's how you see everything equally. And then the next part is Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu. This is the next verse here. More expanded. Srin Midyau Dasinama Dasadveshu Bandishu Sadushvapi Chapapeshu Samabhudir Vishishite. Just simply expansion of that. Seeing everyone equally. Seeing everyone equally, what is that? Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavihastani Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshana. If the learned sages see the humble sages by virtue of true knowledge, see with an equal vision the learned and gentle Brahman, the cow, the dog, the elephant, the dog, and the dog eater. So these are just more expanded explanations. So you put it all together, then you get it. Then you can see what Krishna is really talking about in the summary, and then from the summary you can see how it's expanded outward. And here, then Krishna comes over here, Yati Yogi Yunjita Saratam. Now he said, the person's in transcendence to some degree. He's aiming at least for transcendence. He's trying to see things equally. Just like in the previous verse, Vidya Vinaya Sampane, Krishna had said that Tad Buddhiyas Tad Atmanas Tad Nishtas Tad Parayanaha Gachatna Punar Aritim Gyanani Dutu Kalmashaha. So the same idea is there. You come into that realm of transcendence by, number one, using your intelligence, number two, engaging your mind, number three, progressing with determination and purification, and then actually taking shelter of Krishna. And in that step, then you can gradually see everyone equally, etc., etc. And now, the purification of the mind is more described in detail. That always engage the body, mind, and self in relation with the Supreme. That is, they're following the directions of Krishna, how to come to the platform. They should know the goal is Paramatma realization or Bhagavan realization. Because even the great yogis, as Krishna will say in the 8th chapter, that they know when to leave their body, like Bhishma Dev. Now Bhishma Dev didn't chant 16 rounds a day. He did follow the principles. But he didn't chant 16 rounds a day, so he couldn't even get initiated. He came and said, he asked, can you give me initiation? And say, how many rounds do you chant? I don't. I just fire arrows all day long. Sorry. But his mind was always fixed on Krishna. He was perfect yogi. He knew how to leave the body thinking about Krishna. Now we may chant 160 rounds a day, and we still don't know that. But he had come to the perfectional stage of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting him under any circumstance. So that's called Parayana. He had taken shelter of Krishna. Then a parigraha, these two things are, I guess, predominant for the yogi. Vihaya kamyaksa nispriha, concocted desires, nirmamo, this idea of possessiveness, and ahankara, false ego. And that's one understands that I'm Krishna's eternal servant. He can't have the absence of this possessiveness in reality and this concocted desires unless you get a higher taste by meditating on Krishna. Then there's so many concocted desires going through our minds. And there'll be some idea of kama. But if you're going to sit in trance for 10,000 years, you better give up some of your kama. Reduce your eating and sleeping, mating, and defending. So it's all included here. It's just not very practical in this age. It's not that the process is wrong, it's just that we're not qualified to practice it, that's all. Prabhupada said he went to the Ganges and you see the yogis meditating in their yoga postures. They were doing pranayama. But that's not pranayama. What's that? Yeah, well, they were snoring. Not exactly controlling your breath. Anyhow, it's a bona fide process, it's just that people can't practice it. Our minds are too disturbed in this age. As soon as we sit down for any length of time, immediately we start moving around. And we start looking around. Even when we're chanting japa, sometimes you see devotees go, Hare Krišna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Ram, Ram. It's called radar japa. Hare Krišna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Hare Ram, Ram, Ram. Hare Krišna, Krishna. And then there's seeking japa. Hare Krišna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krišna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, 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 Hare. And then there's gibber japa. Hare Krišna, Hey, what's the weather like outside? Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So to actually be able to perform yoga like this, you have to be able to concentrate your mind, which means you can't grow up on the internet, surfing the internet, and then suddenly decide that you're going to become a yogi. Nowadays, I think the children, 3 years old, they get a smartphone. By the time they're 10 years old, they're dumb. The phone is smart, but they become dumb. So these things are once repeated, practically, and our process, although Krishna said the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. So any process is difficult. We shouldn't think that, this chanting of Hare Krishna is, perfectly chanting Hare Krishna is difficult to get the whole result. But the other ones are impossible. And materialistic life is worse than impossible. It's simply the opportunity to enter into the lower species of life in Kali Yuga. People have no idea what they're doing. They're trying to get some happiness in the material world, but they're doing it in a way that's actually going to cause them unlimited suffering. So, therefore, we should value those who are doing yoga, those who are even trying to give some contribution to the temple, to the movement. They're actually following some kind of auspicious path, as Krishna will go in the 12th chapter. All the different. If you can, fix your mind upon Krishna perfectly. You know that verse? Mayeva mana datsva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, ivashi shashi amam eva, ataravam nasamshaya. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me, thus you'll live with me always without any doubt. Atachitam samadatim nasakshno simayi stiram, abhyab sena yogena tato mam icchantim dhananjaya. So practice, abhyasa. And where else does Krishna use the word abhyasa? Suitable practice. In this chapter, the 6th chapter. Arjuna asks, how can I control the restless mind? Isn't that right? Asamshaya mahabaho manodura nigraham chalam abhyasena tukontya vairagena chigriyate chanchalam himana Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayor eva sadiskriyam. The system of yoga, Arjuna tells Krishna, is very difficult because the mind is turbulent, strong, etc. And chanchalam, it's flickering, chanchalam himana Krishna, pramati, and very strong. And to subdue it, it seems to me like trying to control the wind. And Krishna doesn't say, well, it's easy, I can do it, why can't you do it? No, he says, asamshayam, Sri Bhagavatam vacha, asamshayam mahabaho manodu nigraham shalam, abhyasena tukontya vairagena chigriyate. Suitable practice, abhyasa. And then in this verse, atachitam samadatum nasakshno simahiti stram abhyasena yogayatam am ichchantu nananjaya. Suitable practice. And what is that practice that Prabhupada says? Chant Hare Krishna. Hear Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad-gita. Worship the deity. Serve the devotees. That's suitable practice. So then one can come to the platform where we can fix our minds on Krishna. So atachitam samadatum. If you can't do that, if you can't enter samadhi like that, nasakshnosi, you can't do it, in fixity, then follow the regulations of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, try to develop the desire to obtain me. So we follow Bhakti Yoga, but with the idea of trying to fix our minds upon Krishna. That's the goal. Always remember Krishna, never forget him. And if you can't do that, then Krishna says, at least give up some results of your work and try to become situated, self-situated. So the karma, so at least recognize that Krishna is a proprietor and offer something in a bona fide way. If you can't do that, but at least give up to some good cause the results of your work. So Krishna is very kind. So at least do something progressive that might help you in the future, make some progress towards the goal of life. But if we're already engaged in the goal of life, the sadhana bhakti, what we should know is the idea is to obtain Krishna, not to get some prestige or some comfortable living or to get free from anxiety, whatever the lower reasons are, but it's actually to obtain Krishna consciousness, the sadhana bhakti. It's the liberated stage. It begins from liberation. While others, they made the Varnashram system, they work dutifully as a Shudra or a Vaishya, or as a Kshatriya or a Brahmin. And in other words, they mix their devotion, even their sacrifice to Vishnu is mixed with fruitive desires or mental speculation, which is normal for us. The Varnashram system, fruitive desires are natural, but for us it's also natural. We're suffering, just like the shoot, whatever. It's just that we're not so much. We don't have a clear division of work, and our division of the ashram sometimes is a little mixed up too. We don't always follow the standard procedure of brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Sometimes we mix it all up. In any case, there is a clear path, and even if we can't follow the clear path, at least if we're somewhere on the path going ahead, then there's hope for the future. And if people have no idea what the path is, then they're going to fall into a very difficult situation in this age. So we're trying to figure it out ourselves so we can tell others about it, and maybe convince someone to follow some progressive path. And that way we become inspired to follow a progressive path too. If we don't tell anyone else about it, then we won't learn about it ourselves very deeply. So I'll stop there. Any questions, comments? Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you Maharaj. I wanted to ask you if you can explain a little bit this Paramatma realization, because I never, before Bhakti Yoga, I had some connection with God, but I never heard of this aspect, this middle between Brahman and Krishna.
Yeah, Paramatma is right there in our heart. Otherwise we couldn't ask a question. Because Krishna gives us remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So there's another person with us who helps us remember sometimes, helps us forget, gives us realizations. He gives us knowledge. So that's another person. There's another conscious person. Otherwise, how can we think the sun's moving by accident? No, it's all exactly on time. He's creating all these 8,400,000 species of life. So he's the one who's in Brahma's heart, giving him intelligence, how to manufacture the universe, create it. He's giving us intelligence also, whatever we're doing. So that's Paramatma.
How can one have realized this aspect of Paramatma and not the Krishna?
Well, he is Krishna. You can't realize Paramatma. You can think he's something other than Krishna, but that's due to ignorance. Some ignorance is still there. But Paramatma is Krishna. The person who's telling us what to do, that's Krishna is telling us what to do. Otherwise, we have an eternal relation with Krishna. People just don't know that. And now it's through Paramatma, his expansion. Because as Krishna is Paramatma, he can allow us to fulfill our concocted desires. But when we actually realize this is Krishna who's directing us, then Paramatma is no longer Paramatma for us. It's a personal relation with Krishna.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
Is Paramatma in this function that it is only in material world, in spiritual world, probably not?
No, he's there in the spiritual world. He's Krishna. But here, in the spiritual world, there's no need to tell people how to get sense gratification, fulfill their desires, because there is no such thing. So Krishna doesn't have to appear as Paramatma in the spiritual world. Here, he appears as Paramatma because in the spiritual world, well, I don't know how he does it myself, because I can't do it. So somehow or another, he can expand himself as Paramatma and be Paramatma, and at the same time not worry about what Paramatma is doing. In fact, I'm sure Paramatma is not worried about what he's doing either. It's a little inconceivable. But Krishna is Paramatma, is only here. That activities he does as Paramatma is only in the material world. Just like he has activities in Vaikuntha. But that's only in Vaikuntha. It's not in Goloka Vrindavan.
When rich masses, they have they worship Vishnu like Bhagavan, right? When they pray to God.
Well, Vishnu is Bhagavan.
Yes, but they don't pray to Krishna like God, but to Narayan.
Well, Vishnu is the expansion of Narayan in the material world. I don't know who they pray to. In Goloka Vrindavan, Nanda Maharaj worships Narayan.
Is he worshipping with faith and reverence, or?
Yeah, I mean, how else are you going to worship Narayan? He loves Krishna, but to protect Krishna, he worships Narayan. To protect Krishna. He doesn't. There's even demigods in the spiritual world. How it all fits together, I don't know. I haven't been there for a long time, so I forgot. But it does fit together, and one day we'll understand it. Govardhan, his brother, Nanda Maharaj, his brother, his uncle, whatever, he worships Durga. So how did that fit? Anyhow, Durga is also, she's an expansion of Yogamaya. Anyhow, it's quite an exciting thing. We have a lot to learn, so, but it's all very exciting. What's that?
Confusing. confusing.
For now it's confusing, but even the confusing inspires our inquisitiveness. Otherwise, if it was all really clear, then why would we wouldn't be here in the material world. But now we have something to look forward to learn. Yes?
Hare Krishna. That's why we always have to remember the achintya aspect. When we're in the material world, we think, if I can't understand it, then maybe it's not really true. But that's not a fact. We can't even understand what's going on in our own bodies, yet we want to understand what's going on in Goloka.
Yeah.
You always have to remember the inconceivable aspect of knowledge. If you can conceive it, you cannot fit God into your conception. God is beyond anybody's conception.
And even Krishna's devotees are beyond our conception. What's actually going on there? Krishna's relationship is gradually, even these verses in Bhagavad-gita, gradually they'll become alive to us. Not only that, but I remember Suru was telling me when he was taking care of Prabhupada in 77 in Vrindavan, assisting to Hare Krišna Maharaj. He said that sometimes he thought Prabhupada was asleep. And then saw Prabhupada in his dream, or when he was supposedly asleep, he would be quoting verses from the Bhagavad-gita. So even these verses will come alive one day, They'll become as good, they'll become Krishna to us. Anything else? Thank you. Khala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.